Okay. So good morning, Kelly. Welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
I'm really good, thank you, Paula. It's really
Good.
good to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with
I
you.
know, me too. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
So obviously I'm Kelly. I am a conscious parenting coach and a belief coding facilitator. So I empower parents who are navigating a spiritual awakening, wanting to go through that conscious parenting, but just have a so overloaded of where to start. I help support and empower those parents and just give them that guidance. And I suppose also through doing this, what I am empowering them to do is break those karmic patterns, that generational trauma, and become the parent that they probably wished raised them.
Mm,
Because we do have, unfortunately, a lot of generational trauma and subconscious things that we take on that we don't even realize that we're doing, that has
yeah.
been in our family for generations. And I suppose I support you and empower you to awaken to those and be the cycle breaker of your family. And for me, I've always wanted to work with children. So I always remember being in year 6 and going to volunteer with the reception children and just like
Mm,
helping and supporting them. And from that, I suppose from that, I've always had this keenness to work with children and their families. And that kind of led me onto that path, that career path of going to university, going to get all my qualifications. And I just feel like children are so innocent and they are sponges from conception to about 7, 8 years old. They're sponges absorbing everything around
mm,
them. And unfortunately, they are conditioned by society, by how we raise them, by their peers, school. They are conditioned. And as they are conditioned, they start to lose, not necessarily lose, but I suppose it's their belief system is built and there is a lot of limiting beliefs there that stop us from being our true selves and all those kinds of things. But for me, like my story is a few years ago, I was working full time. I was at
mm,
university full time. I was hoping to apply for a teacher training as well at the time. And I was burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I was
mm,
stressed. And one day at work, I just had this utter like meltdown at work. And I felt utter humiliation at the fact that I'd broken down at work because, with the best intentions of the people around me as I was growing up, what I learned was they used to sort of say to me, don't cry, it's okay, everything's better. What are you crying for? So what that taught
mm,
me is let's hold those emotions in because it's not we don't need to do that. So when I did break down, that was me kind of going against what I'd felt like I'd been taught. And I felt utter humiliation for a couple of years, and then I went through my own spiritual awakening, and I recognized that, gosh, there was nothing to actually be humiliated about at all.
mm,
Like, actually, we should be encouraging these emotions to come out because all we're doing is suppressing them. And through that spiritual awakening, I recognize that society is not normal. The things that it's not teaching us how to regulate our emotions. And what I mean by regulating, if some people don't know what that means, it's managing our emotions, but being able to express them in a healthy way. Because what is not normal is shouting, slamming doors, the things that we've been led to believe. And for me, this a great awakening was like the best thing because I've now learned, I've had to like do the inner work and come to a place where I can express my emotions and it's safe for me to express my emotions. But that hasn't come easy to me. And there's still times
mm,
now where I may feel a bit teary and be uncomfortable around people trying to let
mm.
those tears out. And I've got to self-soothe myself and just encourage myself that it's okay, I'm safe, I can do this. But I think, that's why I'm so passionate about teaching parents how to healthily express emotion, but how to support that and normalize that for children so that they can
Yeah.
become confident and resilient. Because at the minute, where we are currently in society, is we have got a mental health pandemic. We have
Oh,
got
yes.
children, adults, because they haven't been taught how to express their emotions, so they're holding them in. And what that does is it's again that suppression, it's just that build up and there's only so much build up that we can have before we eventually it has an effect on our mental health. And I'm so passionate about supporting parents, empowering them to do this so that their children are the cycle breakers and they learn how to be, they are then going to be able to become confident and resilient adults and live in a society that's actually not more normal, like normalized a society of
Mm,
expressing emotion to what we've got currently.
yeah. Mm.
So that's kind
There,
of my story, I
yeah.
suppose.
There is so much there. And I've got to remember everything you were saying because there's some points that I wanted to pick out. I'm gonna go back right back to the beginning, what you said. You spoke about how society conditions us, which we know that
Yes.
it does. And especially because obviously right now, conscious parenting, gentle parenting, respectful parenting, it's all kind of like a buzzword at the moment. And I
Yes.
think, first of all, there's a lot of misunderstanding over what that actually means. I think a lot of people think gentle parenting is permissive parenting. It means, letting the child take control, and it's
Yes.
all about your feelings. And you speak to your child in a very soft, calm voice, and you
Yeah.
ask them to do things over and over and over again because you're giving them lots of choice, which really annoys me
Yeah.
because that's not what conscious parenting
Yes.
is. I
Absolutely
like the
not.
term conscious parenting, not gentle parenting, for that exact reason, because I think gentle parenting gives you a false, interpretation of what this
Yes.
style of parenting is. I like the term conscious parenting, which is what you are. You're a conscious parent coach. Because I think that the only way to come against the conditioning of society is to wake yourself up from that conditioning, which is to become conscious, to
Yes.
think to yourself, why do I even do the things I do? You know, when I first had my
Absolutely.
first son and all the things that you're told to do for a baby, I remember a lot of it felt really sort of, alien and foreign to me. Things like you've got to learn how to self-soothe and you've got to leave them to cry and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And I just remember my instinct was very opposite, it seemed, to the way that I was supposed to
Yes.
bring up my children. And I know we all say that thing of I want to do things differently to how I was parented. But it's great to say that, but then in the moment, in the in the thick of it, in the day-to-day of it, you don't know what that looks like. You might say,
Yes.
I don't want to yell because my mum yelled at me all the time. So what are you going to do instead? And then people
Absolutely.
go,
But
I don't know
absolutely.
what I'm going to do.
Yes, and I also feel like becomes a part of this as well is your subconscious. So the amazing
Mm-hmm.
thing is your subconscious. We think that oh, it's because it's our subconscious, it don't really play a big role in our day-to-day lives. Actually, our subconscious is running our lives 90% of the time, and it's only like our
Yeah.
conscious that's running 10 to 20%. So
Mm-hmm.
you might have the best intentions of going, I'm never going to turn out like my parent. I'm going to be the best parent. I'm not going to shout. I'm not going to do those things that I know
Mm-hmm.
that I hated as a child because of how it happened to me. Subconsciously, your subconscious has learned that it's normal to shout and it will just do that. There's maybe a
That's
belief
right.
around that,
Yeah.
something. So sometimes you may have the best intentions, but it's your subconscious
Mm-hmm.
running yourself, running it basically. And when you become conscious, you then start working with your subconscious. This is why I feel like for me, subconscious parenting is also doing that inner work,
Yes.
recognizing your triggers. So if you feel triggered when your child is loud or anything like that, look at it as a mirror of something
Mm-hmm.
that's going on inside within you that just needs that attention. And a lot of the time, it is probably your inner child coming for, because your inner child, obviously, it's that younger version of you as a child, and it's something that hasn't been met, that
Mm-hmm.
a need or something that hasn't been met when you were as a child. And that's not to say that you didn't have a good childhood, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But there'll be certain times in your childhood where you may have not been heard, you may not have felt seen, you may have been invalidated by your parents, and that's coming to the forefront in that moment of when you're feeling triggered. And sometimes it's remembering, or the way that I know that a parent that I spoke to recently said to me, when her daughter is triggered, she's being really loud,
Yeah.
it's get having a tantrum, and she's feeling really like internally she's feeling at least, outside she's really calm.
Yeah.
But what she does is, as she's talking to her daughter, she's also talking to herself and trying to self-soothe herself, and kind of going, it's
Mm.
okay, my daughter doesn't understand, she's doing this, it's okay, like, so it's that self-soothing of
Yeah.
yourself as well as your child. And that isn't something that comes naturally
No.
overnight. It's something that does take time, and it does take a lot of work. But if you want to be that cycle breaker and that parent that the parent, the opposite of what your parents were, You've got
Hmm.
to do it. And I think I've never ever spoken to anybody that's ever done inner work where they've gone, I completely regret doing this.
Yes, exactly. It literally changes your life, I think,
Yeah.
and because there's nothing more important than being self-aware. You've got to be
Absolutely.
self-aware about who you are, what you want, what you're doing to go through life. And I think when you're trying to bring up children and you're doing it differently to how you were brought up. And I always say to parents, there's no shame in saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Because it feels like you're supposed to, especially as a woman, you're just
Yes.
meant to know how to be a mother. It's meant to just come naturally. You have the baby, it's meant to be
Yeah.
like a la moment, and everything gets
Yeah.
downloaded into your brain, and you're supposed to know what to do. But
Yes.
but the truth is, we only know as much as we are taught, right?
Yes.
So if you're taught to stuff your feelings down, don't bother your parents with your feelings, you know, that's how you are going to parent.
Absolutely.
And when your child comes to you with their feelings and their emotions, it's not that you don't care, but you might have a hard time sitting with their feelings and their emotions because you probably can't even sit with your own feelings and emotions
Yes.
because you were never allowed to. So of course
Absolutely.
it's going to feel uncomfortable. So it's that thing
Absolutely.
of, but you have to
Totally
know
agree.
that and push through it
Yes,
and
you
not just
do.
go, oh my gosh.
And I think as well, like you said, a really good point is we are not taught how to parent. So
Hmm.
all we're doing is going off how we've been parented. So if we've been, well, what we're going to come forward is, I don't want to do it how my parents did it. How the heck do I do it? Do you know
Yeah.
that? Because until we know better, we can't do better. So it's that learning as well and look at, and a lot of the time, I used to work in children's centres and we used to do antenatal and things like that. And we always used to say,
Hmm.
there's these books that tell you like your child should be doing this, you should be doing that, or your baby. Do not go by that because your baby hasn't read that book. And
Yeah.
then that makes
Yeah.
it even harder for you
Yeah.
because you're like, well, actually, this booklet's telling me I should be doing all of these things. But then you're also saying that because what we also don't want you to do is my baby hasn't done this by that book. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
guidance. However, we shouldn't be going. But again, when your child's shouting in the supermarket, screaming, no, I want sweets, and you're going to be feeling, you're going to get, it's going to bring up that stress is coming.
Hmm.
You've got people staring at you. How do you manage that without storming out of the supermarket
Yeah.
as a parent?
Yeah.
That's because all they want to know is that I can have a shout right now because I'm feeling escalated, I'm feeling judged, I'm getting
Hmm.
watched, or I could just storm out of the supermarket and just not even address it because that is the easier option. And it
Hmm.
is really hard because we're not taught in school. We're not taught like, well, what do we do when our child is having a bit of a meltdown in the supermarket? And
Yeah.
we do have to go as we go. And I think self-awareness is a massive thing to start
Hmm.
consciously parenting. That is the first step. Recognizing the effect that your behavior has on others, the fact that it has
Hmm.
on yourself, and how that affects your child. And then I think what comes is reflection, and reflection's a really big thing in self-awareness as well for
Yeah.
me. Is you reflect on everything that happened. So whether it went good, sometimes you're going to walk away from something and go, damn, I handled that so well. Other
Mhm.
times you're going to go, oh my God, that was disastrous.
Yeah.
And I think it's taking that time to sit with yourself
Mm.
and reflect on a situation that went maybe horribly wrong, maybe really good, because even with the good stuff, we can then
Hmm.
go, I'll do that again next time because that worked really well.
Hmm. That is so true because I was actually talking to another parent coach a few days ago, and I was saying that when I'm at home, like I've got my youngest is 3, when I'm at home and he has a big emotional meltdown, I can let him actually scream and yell to get it out,
Yes.
and then be there to say, okay, to help him regulate, to co-regulate, and to regulate with him. When I'm outside, immediately I'm like, that's not acceptable, right?
Yes.
Which and again, I can't judge myself for that because I do find it hard when people are watching, when family
Yeah.
members are going, are you going to let him get away with that behavior, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
in the home, I'm able to do that. When I'm outside, not so much. So there is no shame in going, okay, I'm not going to be able to handle him doing that here. I'm going to gather him up and we're going to go to the car. Because also it's thinking about other people's comfort levels. Because the truth is,
Yes.
society has no tolerance for noise, for
Yes.
for children's
Totally agree.
noise, for emotion and meltdowns. There is no tolerance for it. So there's no shame in saying we're going, sort of thing, and then going to the
Absolutely, and
car.
I totally agree.
You
I
know,
think if that how you cope with something,
yeah, Yeah.
And that gets you that gets you avoidant of shouting
Mm-hmm.
and feeling embarrassed. I absolutely say this. I think that people make mistakes, and I'm not saying that in
Mm-hmm.
general of you walking out the supermarket, but we all make mistakes, and I feel like, yeah, you can be hard on yourself if you make a mistake, or actually you
Mm-hmm.
can go, hands up, I made a mistake. Tell your child, actually, be honest with them, I made that
Mm-hmm.
mistake. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have
Yeah.
shouted at you.
Yeah.
And again, you're normalizing that mistakes happen, that we all make mistakes. We're not perfect. And like, you are going but whatever you need to do in that moment to keep yourself safe
Yeah.
and to keep yourself regulated, that is what I would encourage you to do. So if you feel like actually I need to leave that shop, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That doesn't mean that you've done a bad job. That doesn't mean that,
Yeah.
you've done something awful. I don't think anyone should be embarrassed or ashamed by that, because actually what you've done is you've put your child first, you've put yourself first,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you've come away. And actually, as well, also asking for help. I think that's a big, massive thing that we all kind of struggle
Mm-hmm.
with sometimes, is when
Mm.
we are struggling, ask for help. So if you are with a friend in the supermarket and that happens, ask your friend, because your friend is probably going to be a bit more neutral than what you are, because
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
child triggers probably you more than it does your friend.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're with your friend or your partner or whoever, be honest and go, I'm really starting to get, it's getting a bit too much for me now. Can you just step
Mm-hmm.
in and just try and see if you can sort them out? Because your
Mm-hmm.
friend's going to want to help you as well,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
or your partner, your family, they're going to want to help you.
Yeah.
But it's also being mindful of who you ask for help as well. Because if you've got, unfortunately, we sometimes have family and friends that are always in support of our conscious parenting.
Mm.
So we've got to be really mindful of who we do ask for help from, because I think sometimes it could make us feel worse. So it's been really
Mm-hmm.
mindful of who are your tribe, who support you, who's not. Because
Yeah.
sometimes grandparents, they do go, oh, why are you doing that? And it can be a bit, it can come across as being criticizing, and it makes you feel
Mm-hmm.
bad. So to kind of avoid that, sometimes I think we need to recognize who can we go to that can support us, that will support us in the right way
Yeah.
that we need at that time.
Yeah. And then on the completely flip side is there are some days where you feel like I cracked this today. I was calm, I was regulated. And by the way, regulated doesn't necessarily mean calm, does it? It
Yeah,
means that
yeah,
you just have enough tolerance for the situation at hand. So
yes,
it doesn't mean that you're not angry or that you're not upset. It just means you're not going to yell. It means I'm very upset right now, but I'm in control of my emotions.
yes,
Doesn't mean you're
yes,
not feeling the emotions. So there are some days where you feel like you take that time, you get down on their level, and you say, I know you're tired or whatever it is, but we need to pay the lady at the checkout and then we're gonna go home. And you have a capacity to do that. You don't resort to
yes,
yelling or storming off or giving them the look, or you don't resort
yes,
to things, because that's why I think self-care is so important, because you're well rested, your mind is not, filled with
yes,
10,000 things. You've had enough food, you've had enough rest, and you feel okay today. And if you're able to parent in the way you want to parent, because you're taking care of your basic needs,
absolutely,
and but
yes.
the problem is a lot of mums don't have that. And that's why I push self-care so much, because it makes such a difference to how you show up for yourself in this world and for your children.
Definitely. And I think as well, it's kind of like pouring from an empty cup. If your
Mm-hmm.
cup is empty, how can you be the best parent that you want to be? And that's why I feel, again, I absolutely on the same wavelength as you, Paula. Self-care is not selfish. You should be
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing yourself. You should be implementing boundaries. You should be doing all of those things to look after you, because as you
Mm-hmm.
look after yourself, you're then going to be the parent you want to be for your
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
And there's nothing selfish about that at all, because if you're pouring from an empty cup, you're going to maybe tired, you're maybe more stressed, you're going to be easily irritable.
Yeah.
And then that's going to have that effect on your child, because if your child is, because your children, unfortunately, they do push our buttons sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
because they know us best, and also where their safety, they feel the most secure with us. So if they're having a bad day, or they've been at school all day, they come
Mm.
home, you are like that emotional outlet for some children. For some children, you're
Yeah.
their emotional outlet. They know that whatever they do, you're always going to be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a positive, but it can also be really, it's a spin on a negative to being a positive, because your child knows that you are their safety,
Yeah.
you are there for them. So they are going to lash, you're going to be the easy target for them to lash out, because I know a lot of parents sometimes go, it's always me, they're always doing this
Yes.
to me.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not necessarily a negative, that can be a positive, because they know that you're there for them all the time. So they know that, whereas in school, they may not be close to that teacher, they may not feel
Hmm.
confident enough to voice that need that they
Yeah.
have. So yeah, sometimes it's hard, because as much as it's really, really challenging
Hmm.
when you're getting it all the time, it's also knowing that, you know, your child feels safest with you, and that's why they're
Yeah.
doing that. So take it as a positive, even when it really
Yeah.
don't feel like that. But if you are
Yeah.
feeling low
Hmm.
or tired or stressed, you've not looked after yourself, you've not done something for you in over a period of time, you're going to feel easily triggered, and you're going to go more towards being reactive than
Yes.
not, than just, supporting and being regulated, like you
Yeah.
said.
And that's the thing. And then it becomes this spiral, doesn't it? Because you're not rested, you're easily triggered. Now they've triggered you. Now you've reacted in a way that you didn't want to react. And now you feel guilty and upset and
Yes.
hard on yourself because.
Yeah.
So it becomes this cycle. And I always say the most life-changing thing that I learned is just repairing with your child, which is going back and saying, that was a tough day today and I shouldn't have reacted how I reacted. And I'm sorry, you know. And
Yes.
just like you said earlier, normalizing mistakes, normalizing that we're all human, and trying to build maintain that connection by saying, like, going to your child and saying, well, I say that all the time. I messed that up today, didn't I?
Yeah.
Today didn't go quite as planned, and acknowledging
Absolutely.
it so that it's not just that we don't just paper over things that went wrong. We
Yes.
acknowledge it and we say we're sorry.
Yes. And the thing is, what we do is, when children are little, if
Hmm.
they do something wrong, what we're doing straight away is say sorry. Children don't understand
Yeah,
what sorry means.
yeah,
And actually, if you're straight away saying say sorry, they say sorry, end of. They don't really learn from that. Whereas if you
no,
kind of, but by you also doing that, they're then going to understand that, oh, I've made a mistake. This is what sorry means. And what also happens is, when you say that you've made a mistake, that encourages your child to come to you when they've made mistakes, not necessarily with
mm,
you, but like in school or at home, something that doesn't maybe involve you. You're going to open up that outlet of them coming in to be able to confide in you by saying, Mum, I made a mistake. When you normalize all of your emotions, so when you're feeling
yeah,
angry, when you've had a bad day, when you normalize that to your child by telling them
yeah,
and verbalizing those things, that encourages your child to come to you and tell you when they've had a bad day, when they've made a mistake. But also, on the flip side of that, it also encourages them to come to you when you've had a good day, when they've done something
yeah,
that might be, all of that. So actually, what you're getting is, you're going to get a deeper connection with your child. You're
hmm,
going to know that your child is going to come to you. You're going to be the first person your child comes to when they've got anything what's worrying them, because they know they can confide in you. And I think the most important thing that we can do throughout that time is no judgment. So giving
hmm,
no judgment, being open, yeah, you can be honest with them. I'm not saying, don't give any judgment at all, like, of no opinion, but
yeah,
be really like open about, like, what does my child need in that moment? Because sometimes we do go into judgment of, well, why are you doing that?
yes,
Do you know,
totally,
and actually that's not what your child needs, because then what happens is your child's gonna be like, oh, I'm not going to tell you again. Whereas if you go, I hear you, I know what you're saying, this is what, can I just give you my opinion?
hmm,
And then actually let them know that it's your opinion. They don't have to take it on board if they don't want to. That's their choice.
hmm,
Because sometimes, we see it all again when our child maybe develops a friendship with the child that's classed as the naughty child or the bad
yeah, yeah,
influence. We try to go, oh, why are you friends with them? Why,
mm,
what we're doing is we're pushing them closer to that friend. And
hmm,
especially for teenagers, I see it time and time again. We know, we can see where they're heading with this friendship.
yep,
We want to try and stop it,
hmm,
but the way that we try and stop it is we try to prevent them from seeing it. We openly share about our opinions or anything like that. And what that does is that just pushes that child further and further to that friendship, to that route that it's going. So it's
yeah,
kind of trying to be open. And I understand, because you're worried about your child. That's only
yeah,
natural to worry about your child. You want the best,
hmm,
but it's really trying to be non-judgmental, trying to be open, share your opinion, but in a way that's not coming across as judgment, or and it's
yeah,
more of a, this is an observation I've seen. And actually, as well, it's maybe asking them open questions. So, say that child has influenced your child to do something,
hmm,
it's kind of giving him a question where they can reflect and recognize that, actually, I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for my friend, and then I wouldn't have got detention if I didn't listen. And
Yeah.
by asking those open questions, it becomes a bit easier
Hmm.
for your child to then navigate and actually for you too. But again, that's something that takes a lot of time. It can take time to build up. It's about you doing that inner work to recognize, because
Yeah.
for a lot of us, we weren't seen, we weren't heard as children. So
Yeah.
naturally,
Yeah.
subconsciously, we do these things again. So it's maybe asking yourself, what was I, what did I not receive as a child, or a time when you felt judgment from your
Hmm.
parents? What happened? Why was I made to feel like this way? Because then
Hmm.
that's going to give you insight into, okay, this is what happened, and then go into then thinking, well, actually, now I know how I don't do that, how I do something differently.
Yes.
And it's really truly amazing. I know that recently I did a bit of inner work on myself, and the realization that I had, it was just like this like light bulb moment going, oh my goodness, that's what I took when my parents said that. Oh, I'm not even my parent. I
Hmm.
don't think it was somebody. But what happened was, I I was as a child, I had low confidence, low self-esteem. I hated attention on myself. Like
Hmm.
as soon as it, and when what I associated with attention was when I did get attention, it was the bad kind where I felt humiliated, I was laughed at.
Yeah.
So what
Okay.
my subconscious built up on was when you get attention, it's the bad kind, it's the one that you do. So you
Mm.
don't want any attention at all. So that's what my subconscious had learnt as a child. And when I went into this work with I had a coach that was supporting me, because sometimes it's okay to do it on our own, but sometimes we need that accountability and that just that
Yeah.
little bit of guidance. And that's
Definitely.
and as I was doing this, what popped up was as a child, I think I was about 3 years old, to be honest. I was at nursery and I wanted to go play with children, but I didn't feel like I could. I didn't feel like I could be myself.
Mm.
And when you think of that of 3 years old, that's how I felt. It's just like, wow, like what are our children at that age feeling? They feel
Already, yeah.
everything, yeah. And what I'd picked up on was that when I'd been myself, and I suppose maybe it was that I can't quite remember if it was being overexcited or anything like that, somebody had
Hmm.
told me, stop being silly, what are you doing?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I'd learnt from that is, no, I can't be myself because then I'm being silly. And then another thing that came that kind of fitted that piece of my puzzle of my story of it's not okay, the struggling to express
Yeah.
my emotions is when I cried, I was told I was being silly and to stop.
Hmm.
And that was another piece of my jigsaw puzzle of being like, oh, that's why maybe I struggled to cry because it's silly. And that
Hmm.
again, that was that belief of like, oh, well, that's why I need to hold the emotions in my subconscious thing it in. So when you do this work, these realizations that you have, and these
Hmm.
like, I call them like little breakthroughs because it makes you like go, wow. Like, and straight away from that, I was like, language is so important. How we're talking to our children is so important because
Hmm.
the word silly is thrown around so much, but I took that personally, and look what happened to
Yeah.
me from that. And obviously, it was a range of other different things, but that is why like doing this work helps you recognize where things come from, where your beliefs come from right now,
Yeah.
and actually doing the work actually identifies what those beliefs are, because you might be thinking, I just don't understand why I'm shouting at my child. I just don't get
Yeah.
it.
Do
And
you know
that's
what
probably
you've just, sorry, because
it's okay, don't worry.
you just given me a light bulb moment as you're talking, and inner child is going, ah, like alarm bells. When I was very young, my mum used to always say to me, stop running around. Like she had a real problem with me playing, just running around. I think it
Yeah.
just bothered her, which I understand. She had 7 kids. So I think noise was, she just overstimulated, overwhelmed. I totally get it
Yes.
now. But she was constantly telling me that I played too much as a child, which literally a child should play too much. So I remember with my kids, I used to have a real issue with them running around the house, like sit down. But then
Mm.
I thought, you know what? They're kids, they're supposed to play, right? And as long as you're not knocking something over or,
Yeah.
isn't it better than that they're playing than sat down staring at a screen? I'd say to myself,
Yes.
which do you prefer? Yes, sat down staring at a screen gives you that peace and quiet, but that's against their nature. They want to run around.
Yes.
So I can yell at them all I want, or should I not get them out in the garden, take them out for a walk, And
Yes.
I think that sometimes we don't want to do the thing that they need if we're honest with ourselves. And this is about being real and
Yes.
honest and self-aware. You don't want to do that. Maybe you're tired or whatever. So you don't want to take them out. You don't want to, but you still want them to sit down and be quiet. You cannot have it both ways,
You
unfortunately.
can't. But also on the flip side of what you've just said, by
Hmm.
going for a walk, that could potentially be part of your self-care of going and
Yes. Yeah.
grounding yourself. But
Hmm.
like I know for me, when I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, like I've got so much going on in my mind and all of this, I just need to go. I get the dog and I take it out. I go take him out for a walk. I mean, he loves it because sometimes he likes to, it's about 2 walks a day. Sometimes I forget.
So
But
he's happy.
yeah, he's happy. But yeah, just getting that fresh air. Like yesterday, it was blooming blowing a gale, but I went out
Hmm.
and I actually really enjoyed that wind, and it just made. And again, it's like that recentering yourself, but also
Yeah.
it is hard, especially because I'm going with a dog, which you think, oh, it's lovely. My dog reacts to other dogs, so sometimes it's not always. Sometimes that Harley
It's
triggers
not
me because
calming. Yeah.
yeah, it's not calming. So I understand that when you've got kids, it's not always calming, but it's
Hmm.
about going into even like an open field and just letting them rip, run around,
Yes.
break that energy and, do that because then, and you just take, while they're running around, they're safe, just taking in a couple of deep breaths
Hmm.
and just imagining yourself. Like I love the one of grounding with like imagining that you've got roots at your feet and just those roots grow to Earth's core, and then what that's bringing you is from Earth's core, that's bringing that light up into you and that's centering you
Yeah.
and just keeping you grounded and safe. And that I do that for a couple of breaths, and I absolutely love doing that because it just makes me feel a bit like more centered and more like, yes, I've got this.
Yeah.
And just doing something simple like that, and actually you can bring your children to that because how fun is it to imagine that you've got roots into growing out of
Hmm.
your feet and it's going to the air, so you can absolutely bring your children into all these fun things and like meditating and things. You can bring your children into any type of meditation. It doesn't have to be let's lay down and sit down and close our eyes and
Hmm.
because sometimes I struggle with those as well. What I like, there's a lot where you can go out and you can go, right, what's 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you
Hmm.
can smell, 2 things that you can see, and then 1 thing that you can touch. So even you can even do those things with your children
Yeah.
and bring them as part of that meditate, that recentering yourself, grounding. It's a really
Yeah.
like fun way, and like even like imagining your happy place. So I've in the past, when I used to work in a children's centre, I used to make up these little bags for like self-regulating for children, but actually there was one where there was a shell in it, and what that you did is you'd hold the shell, and this is an adult can do this as well, holding a shell
Mm.
and just imagining your happy place, like what does that feel like? Where is that? I mean, mine is on a beach anyway with probably a
Yeah.
cocktail. I'm not
Love
gonna
water.
lie. Towards the sea, yeah. So like whatever your happy place is, so if your happy
Yeah.
place is somewhere like in the forest or something, going to get something that could maybe represent the forest so that you can touch it as you're imagining it and
Hmm.
bringing it to life a bit more. And actually, it brings it to your children's. I know that even again when I went to in the nursery, I love not if I just needed like a couple of minutes of just like they're all running around screaming, I think we'd all lay down on the floor and I would tell them a story of we're going to the seaside and like I would make up all these noises if we're going in the car, we're going to turn the car on and make the noise of a car, we're going to go to the beach and oh, can you hear the seagulls, can you go to
Yeah.
the sea, what, oh, can you, let's run away from the sea, and just make it really fun, and let's get
Yeah.
an ice cream, like what flavor have we got? And again, it's just that calm down period because when you're
Yeah.
feeling like really stressed, because again, something that we've probably been taught from society and from generations is children should be seen, not heard. So
Yes.
when things are going off like around us, like in supermarkets and all
Hmm.
things like that, it's backing up that belief, like it's making us feel overwhelmed and like that struggle. So it's okay as well to take yourself off, just say, oh gosh, I'm getting a bit stressed, or like however you want to word it to your child, and coming away from that situation and just going to get a drink or just doing something that recenters
Hmm.
yourself or a bit of fresh air in the garden, then coming back to a situation. And I think again that's normalising it for your child. And I know that one family that I worked with, they called it decompression time, but it was a thing that the whole family used. So if one parent came home from work
Yeah.
and they would say, I just need a bit of decompression, and they would go off and have half an hour to themselves to do whatever they needed to do, then come back and okay. And then what they started doing, the parents, is asking their children when they could recognise that they did decompression time. They would go, I
Yeah.
think you need to go decompress for half an hour. Do you want to go up to your room and go? And then they would just take themselves off up to the room, go do whatever they need to do, read a book or do a bit of colouring, whatever that looked like for
Yeah.
them. And it worked really well. And what they were trying to normalise was it's okay to feel overwhelmed, but it's actually about being like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I need to have this time. And they took themselves off. And what you're kind of doing is you're stopping that reaction from happening for your
Yes.
child, for you.
Hmm.
And I think when they said it, I was like, that's such a really good idea of calling it
Yeah.
decompression time. And it worked really well for them.
Oh, that's really good.
Challenging. And it's also about the parents because as people we
Hmm.
naturally focus on negative things. So as soon as we could be having a really good day, something negative happens, and then we focus
Yeah.
on the negative. And
Hmm.
when we do that, it's again that backing it up. So for children, sometimes we forget to focus on the positive. So you could have had a really beautiful day, but then your child had a massive tantrum and that's it, it's ruined your day.
Yeah, and
And
that's
that's all you
it.
focus
Yeah,
on. But your
yeah.
child could have said, I love you 5 times and given you a hug. So it's those
Hmm.
little things. But yeah, I feel like I've totally gone off a tangent from belief coding
No,
now.
no, 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 it's fine. Carry on.
Um, but yeah, that this is, but I'm just kind of sort of talking about, I suppose, the subconscious. Like this is the amazing thing about
Yeah,
it. So as
yeah.
children, that child may will then maybe grow up think just in his head that it's always been naughty, it's always
Mm,
bad behaviour. Then they may come and have a session, and it might be that they're feeling reactive with their child, but then that session actually identifies that, well, I was told naughty is this, so this is why, or I was shouted at as a. Sometimes it's not even necessarily the. Sometimes we go in thinking like, oh, it's going to be like because I shouted at my child, like I was
hmm.
shouted at as a child, and it's not actually the case.
Yeah,
It's something entirely like different, and that's what I found is so mind blowing. But the testimonials and things that I've had, like belief coding, is just an absolutely amazing modality to use, and it's something that I do offer as one-offs, but also as part of my one-to-one coaching. That's what
hmm.
I incorporate because I can give you strategies and strategies and strategies if you really want, and absolutely the work. But sometimes it's about doing that inner work as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
so that you can then it not only implement the strategies but also feel a little bit calmer and regulated whilst you're doing the strategies that are suggested. Because it's easy to just blame your child for everything for
yeah,
their behaviour, but
yeah.
there's probably something going on inside of you. And I think the really amazing thing with having a coaching is that you've got that accountability.
That's right.
And I suppose for you as well, like, when you're working with your parents,
Yeah,
it's that accountability of being like, I've done it, I've done what I've said I was going to do,
yes,
whereas it's easy for us to go, oh, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. And then you
yeah.
put it off and off and off, but things don't get better, they just kind of get worse.
That's
And
right.
it's really hard as well because, as parents, we're busy, we've got all of these
Life
things
is
going on.
happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So by having like a coach and things, you're giving yourself that time to then be able
Yeah.
to go, I'm going to implement these, I'm going to have that accountability and that time to do the inner work that you may need and those realizations that you might need to have.
It's so true. I always say, I said to a lady, a mum the other day, I said, I'm not super nanny. I'm not going to give you, you got to do this, and then you do this, and then your child will do this.
Yes, yes,
Yes, like you said, we give tips and we give strategies, right? But a big part of my coaching is parent centric. It's about you because
yes,
you're only in control of yourself, right? And I think we have
absolutely.
this incorrect, what's the word, notion that we control our children. Well, we're not really supposed to control them. We're meant to
Mm,
have that connection with them and influence their behavior. That's what we do.
absolutely.
We bring them up, we raise them, but we can't control them because they're human beings.
Yes,
And
I
one
totally
thing I
agree.
think, yeah, one thing every single human being agrees on in this world, I'm sure 100% of people hate being controlled. And it
Yes,
makes you straight away want to rebel, doesn't it? So
absolutely.
it's a normal human thing. We don't want to be controlled, and our children are little humans. They're just like us. They don't want to be
Yes,
controlled. And yes, you can control them with coercion and with fear, and those things might work in the short term. I'm not saying they don't work. Of course, yelling at a child
yes,
will work, but I always say, how much harm do I want to do to my child? Obviously, no parent's going
absolutely.
to say, I want to harm my child, but we
Yes.
do inadvertently harm them by some of the methods we use. And that was my why, really, for working with families and children. And I'd love to hear what's your why behind what you do.
I think for me, it's been like my story that I've had, my experience. I, I feel like I've just had this pull to always work with children and families. Like I said, from a young age,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't necessarily go, oh yeah, that's exactly the reason why I felt pulled to. I think I always felt like children are innocent.
Mm-hmm.
They are so beautiful and they just need a guiding hand on how to
Yeah,
hand, we need to be supporting our children to have the best life that they can because
yeah.
they are so innocent. And I feel like that for me is the reason why I got into this. And then as I started my career, got into it, I went into nurseries, did children's centres.
Mm.
I recognised that there was there was a put like I really wanted to support parents to recognise the why, because I came from the generation of smacking. I came from the generation
Yeah,
of boys don't cry, and it's bloody. awful, if I'm honest. Like,
Mm.
then that's the nicest term that I can kind of put
Yeah,
for it.
on
It's
air.
not, yes, like, when I think, to a time when maybe even just the threat of being smacked as a child,
Mm,
it's that your heart starts beating, you feel embarrassed, and you feel embarrassed, you feel scared,
mm,
and I think anyone that can kind of say now, smacking did me no harm, is absolutely, they need to go back to the childhood and remember the time when they was threatened to be smacked and think about how
mhm,
they felt, because in that moment I can tell you that it will have done you harm, in the sense of you maybe feel embarrassed if you did get smacked, you might have been
mhm.
feeling fearful, all of those types of things. And for me, I feel like that's the reason why I went into this, because
Yeah.
I wanted to make a difference in how I know that how I would, and I'm not saying that I was raised, I was raised with the best intentions, like every single parent out there. You're raised with the best intentions to be the best that you can be. But through my own story of the things that have happened to me, I really want to just encourage and make that difference
Mm,
in being able to say, yeah, I helped society by being able to normalize emotions.
yeah. And I think that conscious parenting for me has been life changing, and I'm not even over, you know, I'm not
Yeah.
even exaggerating that. So, for people listening, what would you say are the incredible benefits of, consciously, respectfully, parenting your children?
For me, I think it's the realizations that you have,
Hmm.
the breakthroughs, because you are never going to regret doing, like I said, you're never going to regret doing the inner work, but you're also never going
No.
to regret it shouting at your child, because you're going to have that awareness. You're going
Hmm.
to be able to, obviously, it's not, sometimes there may be times when you are going to do that, but actually, you're not going to be
Hmm.
hard on yourself, because you've actually earned up to the mistake, you've apologized,
Yeah.
and you're not going to sit in your bedroom crying and beat yourself up about it, because
Yeah.
actually you know that everyone makes mistakes, and you're normalizing that for your child.
Hmm.
And for me, I feel like it's just so important, and having that partnership with your child, like
Yes.
the difference that it's gonna make. Because for me, a lot of parents, they think, like you said earlier about gentle parenting, this conscious parenting, it's like hairy fairy. We don't have choices. We
Hmm.
have no consequences. It's not like that at all. For me, the way I view conscious parenting is that you're in partnership with your child.
Hmm.
You have that connection, you have that understanding, you have that empathy for them, and your child has it for you too. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that you can't, because a lot of parents might be like, well, you're saying that, I'm not a parent, I should be up here, and I'm
Hmm.
not, it is equal, but I'm also saying you can, you are their parent, you're not their friend.
Yeah.
And if your child is doing something, it's again about giving that choice, but
Yes.
also giving a consequence. And by a consequence, it doesn't have to be a scare tactic of,
Hmm.
you're not, it can be just something really simple, that a couple of minutes shaved off the telly time, or, just
Hmm.
something that there's a consequence for that behavior. And that's what it is. It's about letting your child know there's consequences for our behavior, because in life there is consequences for our behavior, the
Hmm.
way we make people feel, the way that, you know, things that can happen to us from the behavior that we do, all of those types of things is a consequence to everything. And I think when you build that self-awareness up and you recognize that, you then
Yeah.
start to understand your behavior.
It is so true. And we don't have, I personally think we don't have to prove to our children that we're in charge, that we make the rules, because
Yes,
we just are in charge.
yes,
So we have to just
absolutely.
step into that confidence of we are the leaders in the home, you know, but
Yes,
just because I'm a leader doesn't mean I have to yell at you and smack you and you know it is you. I don't have to enforce my leadership that way because I
yeah,
am the leader, you know.
absolutely. And I think by doing by being like that, having that like balance of you're in a partnership, you're going to get that respect anyway, because you
Yeah.
respect your child and then your child respects you. So I totally agree with you there. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't want people to think that just because you decide to conscious, parent consciously means that your child would definitely turn out a certain way.
Yes.
We still don't have 100% control over what your child does as an adult because, again, we all are human, we all have
Absolutely.
choices. But I want to know that I did the best I can without causing them and causing them the
Yes,
least amount of harm that I could. I did my best with that. And I can
absolutely.
walk away, right? And be
Yes.
I, I did
It's
definitely did the
ouch, yeah.
best that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that because, like I said at the beginning of like near my story, children are conditioned
Hmm.
by their surroundings. So predominantly they are at home. They are, you are, you're parenting them predominantly at home, so they're going to learn a lot. But in school, unfortunately, there is like bad influences and there's
Yeah,
peer pressure
yeah.
and all those things, and that can like, put a factor into that as well. But by having
Impact,
that
yeah.
relationship that, yeah, by having that relationship that you're having, what what I would hope, and I mean, I say hope, but I would no doubt imagine is your child's going to come to you. If they make a mistake, if something happens where it was peer pressure, they may do something that gets them in trouble, but they
Yeah,
actually feel safe coming to you and telling you, and that's the difference. By not
yeah,
hiding it,
yeah,
they've come to you and told you, and yeah,
yeah,
that's not your fault because they've made that choice. They understand that choice,
yeah, yeah.
but being able to talk to you and tell you, that's the biggest difference that there is.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
Oh no,
having a
thank you.
chat
It's
with
been a
us today.
pleasure.
We've done, what is it, about an hour? Not bad, actually. One
Yeah.
hour on the dot. I
Yeah.
was so sure we were going to go over.
No, I did feel. I thought I could actually continue talking
I
about
know.
this all day.
Oh, well, thank you so much.